Really? Good morning. There we go. All right. All right. Good morning. This is Friday, May 11th. I am Councilmember Mitchell Englander, the chairman of the Public Safety Committee, and I am joined by Councilmember Joe Buscaino.
Thank you.
And Mr. Dennis Zine, Councilman Dennis Zine, is on his way. I don't believe he's going code 3, and he's sitting in traffic, so he's on his way. He better not be going code 3.
Unauthorized, yeah.
Unauthorized. And we're going to go ahead. We've got two calendars. The first being the regular scheduled meeting, and then we have a special at 9:15. And I'm going to go through the consent calendar. While we have no public speaker cards for general public comment, you have time to get them in if there's anybody here that wants to speak on general public comment. Since we don't yet have a quorum of this committee, we don't have the opportunity to open it up for general public comment. So I'm going to hold that if there are cards that come in for when Mr. Zine comes in and we have a quorum. Having said that, and I'll reiterate, right now it will be consent agenda per the chair of the committee, but we'll open it back up to reaffirm committee vote on the consent items when Mr. Zine gets here. So for now, we'll just go ahead and go through for consent, unless I hear otherwise, items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you're here on items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, you are free to go. And seeing nobody rushing out of their chairs, there must be other items. Oh, there's go. We just lost 3. All right. And thank you for coming. And have a great weekend. And then we'll go ahead and, if we could, take item 11 first. Mr. Clerk.
Morning, John White, City Clerk. Item 11, Emergency Operations Board Report relative to the City of Los Angeles Recovery Functional Support Annex.
And is there anybody here from the departments that is going to... Good morning.
Good morning. Anna Burton with the Emergency Management Department. Mr. Featherstone is going to be joining us in about 5 minutes as well, if we'd like to wait, or I can answer any questions as necessary.
Well, why don't you just go ahead and start, if you could, walk us through it, and then he can go ahead and give us a more elaborate, detailed perspective.
Yes. Good morning again. The city had an emergency recovery plan, which is an annex to our emergency operations master plan, dated from 1995. Over 2 years ago, the department took a solid look at this and began reviewing and updating it. This plan incorporated the input from most city departments. When drafted, it was passed through the Emergency Management Committee and then approved by the Emergency Operations Board. At that time, as the executive assistant to the board, I then forwarded this to the mayor, who then is now forwarding it to the council for their approval.
Okay, so in the idea, what are the principles of the plan?
This is the city's recovery plan. So if we were to have an emergency or a disaster, this identifies the roles and responsibilities of the city departments and how we would work with those non-city agencies to initiate and then process through the recovery from a disaster, including construction, city finance and administration, recovery of fees, as well as working with the state and FEMA to assist both public and private individual and businesses through the recovery process.
Now, and does this include part of the mayoral executive order, what was it, 35, if I recall, which was that all departments in the city have a plan and coordinate with EMD, or is this completely outside?
This is a separate annex, sir. So departments do have their own emergency departmental plan, which is specific to their own needs, their employees, and their continuity of operations. And we will be forwarding that response to you as requested earlier through a separate committee process. This is a standalone annex that really describes how the city will recover from a disaster.
I see. Okay, and with that, then where do we present that formally? So everybody's completely informed and aware of what those recovery responsibilities are.
Those departments were actually involved in detailing what their own responsibilities and missions would be in a disaster. So they were party to actually drafting those components of the annex.
Did that come through the EOB?
Yes, sir.
And how many departments were responsive?
I'm sorry, we're responsive or?
Yes, I mean, how many show up?
Oh,
When was the
for
last time we had a
EOB?
quorum of the EOB?
Last month, sir. Our next meeting is.
We had a meeting last month.
I apologize.
When was the last time we
Our next
had a
meeting is
quorum?
May 21st. We
Right.
meet every other month, and we did have a quorum at our last meeting, which was March. Thank you.
Oh.
I think, Deborah, you were there with me, March. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was given bad information. I was told that there's a lot of departments. You guys are doing a phenomenal job, so let me compliment you on that.
Thank you.
What I've been told is a lot of departments don't show up, and we haven't had a quorum for the last 3 meetings. That we've had meetings, but we haven't had all the departments participating, and there has been lack of quorum.
No, sir, we did have a quorum in March, and I believe we had a quorum in January.
Oh, terrific. Okay. When we went through this on the budget recently, it was stated differently on the record that it's been very difficult to get a quorum. Now, I could be confusing this with something else. We have, there's another meeting that takes place, perhaps, that has all the general managers attend?
No, this
The same one.
is the meeting, and there has been difficulty in the past, but the current chair, the chief of police, has been very supportive and outreach to the general managers, and this, within this calendar year, and I believe we had a quorum in November as well. We could report actually on the status of that if you would like.
Could you, and let me know which departments haven't come, because I want to thank LAPD and LA Fire, particularly in EMD, for pushing this. It's critically important for all those to participate, and from what I've heard, it was very difficult in the past to have a quorum. In fact, I believe our chief legislative analyst was pushing the idea of changing the code to suggest that some departments can have either AGMs or proxies, something else, so somebody could attend if the general manager could not, and that you could still have the meeting, and trying to work around it because of these issues. And, you guys are doing all the work, all the notifications, putting all the packages together for emergency disaster response and preparedness, and then I couldn't imagine how frustrating that is. You have the meeting and nobody shows up, and or not enough people show up, and this is one of the most critical things that we're functioned with, and so I really appreciate and understand where you're coming from. Is there anything you would suggest we do differently to try to get better participation? Although I'm grateful to hear that you had a quorum at the last meeting.
I would defer to our general manager. I'm sure he has some very strong opinions about how to answer that question, and
I have no doubt. Okay, so we'll wait for him to get in. Do we have any ETA?
I spoke to him about 5 minutes ago, and he was
Okay.
just around the corner.
He's probably with the design. Uh-oh. I would put those two together. All right. Mr. Buscaino, do you have anything?
I do, out of curiosity, when was the last time the city had an emergency and when you utilized this annex?
The recovery
Right.
was for the Sayer fire when the Oak Ridge Mobile Home Park burned down.
Okay. That's all. I mean, also when we've had I know oftentimes when was the last time we emulated an emergency, a citywide emergency?
A citywide?
Yeah. Drills, exercises. We
actually have an event going on this morning. We're hosting the command post in the Emergency Operations Center
Good.
for the presidential visit.
Good.
But we've had, since I think January 21st, approximately 30 events that required EMD to respond in either one of the 3 EOC level activations.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and take item 3, if we could.
Do you want to take an action on the annex at this time, or do you want to hold it for the arrival of Mr. Featherstone?
Yes,
Hold it?
we'll hold it.
Okay. Also, one clarification on item number 5. A CA report was submitted after the publication of the agenda. You approved 5. You want to approve the CA report with number 5.
All All right. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Commander, how are you?
Good morning. I'm Commander Regina Scott with the Information and Technology Bureau with the Los Angeles Police Department. And I'm here to report on encryption on the radio. So my understanding from the motion, you wanted to know a little bit about our system and then how encryption would work. And so to start out, our system, we have the XTS 5000 radio, and we have the same in the consoles. We have about 11,000 radios. And when we first purchased those radios, we also ensured that like about 1,150 we actually purchased with encryption for some of our specialized divisions. And the radios that we did purchase, which is the Model 3, it is capable of being encrypted. It's also incapable of having a mic to do GPS. So it has that capability, but it would require a firmware that we would have to flash the radio.
Let's take a step
Sure.
back if we could. What is encryption?
Okay, encryption is more like an algorithm in the frequency, so it kind of scrambles it so that outside, like outside scanners or other outside agencies would not be able to monitor what's being said or what's being heard on the frequency. And then in order for that encryption to work, you would have to configure they call keys. You would have to configure those keys with the consoles or with the radio channels so that everything is working on the same key. Outside of that, then outside agencies, unless we provided them with the keys, outside citizens, any other scanning components, any of these internet programs that they have out there that you can do over your telephones, they won't have that capability to listen in onto our frequency.
So,
Unit traffic.
Yeah.
Ambulance en route felony. First San Pedro, 51 in San Pedro. Call transmission 76.
that's live.
Correct.
That is an app that I downloaded for free
Correct.
that I just opened up. That's a live Code 3 call. There was one a minute ago, and I didn't have the speaker on. That was a Code 30 ringer at a residence, which is an alarm call, which means that there could be somebody inside. And the person inside probably has the same app on their phone, and they're listening live. And they also know if a unit is actually responding or not, because on a Code 3 run, the unit has to announce their location, that they're going Code 3, and they're on their way. So they can sit there robbing a place or doing whatever they're doing while they're listening to their free app that they downloaded to see if there's actually a unit responding. Now, I'm not trying to broadcast that everybody should do this and download it, but I'm hearing more and more often that this is occurring, thank you for that, that this is occurring frequently. In fact, we are having officers in the field oftentimes showing up at a location and they're either the people are gone or they found their scanner, or if they do apprehend a suspect, oftentimes the app is still open and running on their phone, and while they're handcuffed in the back of the car, they're listening to the broadcast going off. I've heard all kinds of stories. And so I really appreciate that you brought this to our attention as well, and you're letting us know what opportunities are available to stop this. It's got to be incredibly difficult for our officers out there when they're chasing calls and they're trying to help people, and they get there and they find out that the suspects already knew they were coming, are listening to. They don't have to go and buy a radio or a scanner and spend hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars like they used to. They just download a free app and they're listening to us live. So the radios and the technology, as you suggested, have the capability to be encrypted.
That is correct.
And what would be the next step now, if they were encrypted, would that then scramble? I remember back in the day when we were on analog and it wasn't all digital, and it used to just sound like almost like Morse code, and half of it sounded like you were underwater if you were listening to it on a scanner or anything else outside of a police radio. Was that considered encryption, or was that something a little different?
I think that was more of locking out a channel, and from that to technology we have now, where we would scramble it, when we would encrypt it, so the the internet app that we listened to just earlier, or a scanner, they wouldn't hear it. It just would be silent. And then the same way with an officer that had an unencrypted radio, they would know that someone was on the channel. It would just be silent.
I see. And what scares me even more, quite frankly, than an officer showing up to a location and there not being a suspect there because they were listening to the scanner, they were listening to the app. What scares me to death, quite frankly, is, I went to the Medal of Valor yesterday, and I saw you there as well, so thank you. And the Purple Heart, and listened to some of the stories of these officers and what happened. Stacy Lim, for example, in the follow home, and all these other incidents. There was an officer that received the Purple Heart for an ambush many, many years ago, and his partner was there, and the story was that when he showed up and rolled into Jordan Downs, there were 5 gang suspects that were stationed at different positions. So as the officer was shot at and hit in both hands and hit, as he was driving out, they were set up in different locations so they can all fire upon him on his way out, he and his partner. And so just when he thought he was safe and would turn another corner, there was another shooter shooting at him. And it was, when you hear these stories, it's unbelievable to think that this is continuing to happen in this day and age, and it's been happening for many years. But now you add another component to that, and the technology, the fact that they can now listen and know exactly when we're going to be there, where we're at, where we're coming from, because we have to broadcast those things, code 3. When we have the ability in the technology now to encrypt that, it sounds to me like it would be incredibly critical for officer safety, for victim safety, for the general public, and also so we can ensure that we get there in time where they haven't fled, and then we have a fleeing felony situation or something else. So with that, what would it take, what would be the next step to move forward in encryption? And I can only guess it's going to be money, but what's the next step?
And that's correct. I got an estimate from Motorola, and actually Motorola is actually in the audience with us. And so right now, if we were to encrypt, just to give you something, we do have some encryption with our department right now, so that you do know we have about 8 channels that are encrypted. We have about 1,500 radios and mobiles that are out there currently right now. We have a program where, well, it's not a program, but if we have a special task force that actually needs to operate encryption, they can come to us. We have about 50 or 60 radios on hand that we do loan to them. And then all our major operations like vice, narcotics, commercial crimes, the chief of police, obviously, and SWAT, they are currently operating on encryption radio. But to answer your question, it would be about $7,700,000 to do so. We would have to touch each radio. We would have to flash it with the firmware, and then we would have to put a key in. Then we would have to touch each console. We have about 160 consoles in both of the dispatch centers. We'd have to touch each one of those and then put the encryption on the consoles, and then we'd have to remap that to make sure that the communications now would have the capability to monitor those channels. And then we'd have to synchronize how we would deploy it, because once we encrypt that radio, those radios would no longer be able to be used in on our base channels. So it's a doable thing. It's more of a financial thing. What we did do with this motion, I also looked to see what other major agencies had it, so we could take a look to see how they did that transition. But when we looked at it, New York does not have encryption. They're almost like us. They're an encrypted hybrid thing. So they have it for specialized or when they know they're going to go undercover. But basically New York, Chicago, Boston, Miami, Houston, they are not encrypted. I looked around just locally to see who's encrypted, and Santa Monica is, Pasadena. And to prepare for this, I actually looked on, Google, because I love the internet. And in there, I saw that when they did go to encryption, there was some backlash from the public. So that would be a thing that we would have to market it if we were to do that.
Sure.
To make sure we market it, because their big thing was, what are you trying to hide? What happened with the transparency, kind of thing. But they got over it. So I think that we would be able to do it. But again, I think at the end of the day, it really is a financial issue. We're talking 7.7 million, which the police department at this time do not have in their budget.
They don't have that in their budget? Having been sitting through the budget process every day.
Maybe Motorola can underwrite it.
They did, I will to give Motorola, it is a steep cost, but they did give us a substantial discount with the 7 million on it.
Really? Wow.
Right. So, like I said, we are, little by little, when we have a little extra money in our budget for the radio side of it, we do purchase the firmware so that we could have it, so that if an officer needed something immediately, we would be able to take existing radios, because obviously this does not include purchasing additional radios. But we would be able to come, so let's just say Harbor wanted to do a special task force, they could come to us, they could either borrow our radios, or we would be able to, because we have about 200 firmware that we can flash right now, we could take 20 or 30 of their radios in existence, and then we would be able to,
So once we flash a particular radio with the firmware and the update, do they still have the ability to listen to the normal channels as well? Or
yeah. That's a
is
good
that
question.
radio only now set up for encryption, and therefore it's
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me explain how that works. Because it causes interference, if your radio is encrypted and you try to broadcast on our base channels, it causes interference. So it will cause a PSR to hear, a big screech before it would calm down, and they don't know what that is. So we program it right now that when you get an encrypted radio, you are only able...
Can you give us that description again of that?
So our radios have to be programmed that only the channels that we currently have encrypted, that's the only time encryption would work. If you switch to base, it would take that encrypted radio and just bring it back to normal so that it wouldn't interfere with anything. But if we went department-wide, then you would be able to, no matter where you were, you'd be able to switch to...
That explains I think my wife's voice is encrypted, because that's usually all I hear. I'm just kidding. Sorry. So, do we have a proposal from Motorola that we can look at that could be submitted? And I'm guessing that there's part of that cost is going to be the firmware, but the bulk of the cost, from what you're suggesting, would be the actual personnel time to flash all the radios and the terminals and do all the updates, etc.
The estimate they give me was an estimate. If you're asking for an actual quote, I'd have to go back to Motorola to get that. But in that quote that the estimate that we asked them, my personnel that works under ITB, we would flash the radios, and then Motorola would have to configure. We don't have the technology to the skill set to upgrade the consoles. So the labor would be that they would go in and touch the consoles, and then my personnel would go in and flash the radios.
And there may be some grant funding and other things available I think we should really look at in doing something like this, particularly if most cities like New York and others aren't on digital. I would think it might behoove Motorola, who may be interested in looking at the idea of promoting the fact that we would be the first large city, not to discount Santa Monica, because we like our friendly partners, but the first large city then that would be really encrypted and on the digital system. But with that, it's outside of a budget decision. I think it would also be a policy decision. Has the chief had any input or suggestions? And does he have an idea of where he might want to be on this?
When I first got into my position, I had that discussion with the chief of police, and he told us to make that happen, to see what it would do to do that. And I think from that involved encrypting other radios, creating this loan program so that our task force, because currently we have several task forces out there right now that are working under encryption, which prior to having that conversation with the chief, probably would not have happened. So he understands where we need to go. He fully supports it. But there are some steps that we would have to take, as far as marketing that out to the public to ensure that we're doing this for the right reason, and it would be officer
Absolutely.
safety issue. So
And I think the police commission needs to weigh in on this as well if they haven't done so already. Do we know if the commission has weighed in?
Richard T. Thank, Executive Director of the Police Commission. No, we have not. I can also tell you from my personal background that Orange County law enforcement has an integrated county-wide radio system, and in 2000 that system was operational, and all their radios are encrypted. All handhelds and car radios are encrypted in Orange County, with the exception of what they call red frequency, which is a county-wide frequency. and that frequency is not encrypted, but all the...
That way in a major disaster or something,
Yes.
they could switch over to that channel and everybody can
Exactly
hear
right.
what's going on.
Public Works, et cetera, can go to that frequency, but all the law enforcement frequencies are encrypted.
Well, that's because that's where you come out of, and so I'm sure you led that effort. And so, but now we have you. So with that, could I ask you, Mr. Tiffany, can you bring this to the commission? Is this something the commission could take up and we could start looking at in terms of policy, at least? And
Certainly, we'll work with the department, have the department prepare a staff report that would have some information you've asked for today.
Terrific.
Bring it to the commission and pass it to the
including
committee.
possible grant funding or UASI grants or whatever that might be, I would think are critically important for emergency operations as well. So if we can look at that, and if you can do that,
Absolutely.
and then when you're ready and it's gone through at least some of the commission process, we'll bring it back here. So we'll go ahead and keep it in committee with no time frame at this point. I want to keep it open because we do want to focus on this, and I don't want to push it to say in the next 30 or 60 days. It depends on where you guys are at. We're on your time frame. And so this is something that should go to the commission. Sounds like the chief supports it. I appreciate it, and you, Mr. Chief, bring a lot of experience to the table on this as well, so I appreciate your leadership on this. And with that, we are now joined by council members also. Dennis Pezine is here.
There he is.
Out of traffic and safe in one piece. Welcome. And did you want to add anything on the encrypted radios? Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and reopen the consent calendar to reaffirm those decisions on that now that we have a quorum. And with that, we also have we'll go ahead and open public comment. By the way, just to reiterate, on consent, we had items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Right.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead, we've got one public speaker card. We'll go ahead and open public comment at this time. Valerie Keegan, if you can come up, please. Good morning.
Good morning,
Thank you for your patience.
and thank you for hosting us this morning.
Good morning.
My name is Valerie Keegan. I am from Hollywood. I don't know if this is necessarily to this purview, but I also chair emergency services and public safety in the Hollywood area. In 2008, we conducted a full-scale mock evacuation drill of the Hollywood Hills. Well, we learned a lot. We learned how long it was going to take to get out of these hills. We learned that we do not have enough access routes. We learned how many seniors we have, how many pets we have, and that we blew through our evacuation site at Hollywood High School in about 30 minutes. We also did learn about our communications with our police radios, that not all of them did work in the hills. That's putting our officers in great jeopardy. While everybody in Hollywood, all of our gang members, everybody are listening to that exact app on a regular basis. When you've got somebody up at a high-profile venue or at somebody's home and they're hearing exactly where you're coming and they know that your police radio isn't working, they can get out, get down. They caught one guy just sitting on the porch watching LAPD go on up. Thank God that they identified the tennis shoes, because they did catch him. We've got great people in Hollywood. So the encryption is important. Please look at our radios in the hills. I know that it did not work for our motor officers. And I would also like to ask you one other thing. I know that you've all heard about the Hollywood Community Plan coming forward. The one thing that seems to have not been addressed or looked at is public safety. We have more...
Oh, you are on public comment, not on the particular agenda item.
No,
So yes,
I am
keep
on
going,
public
keep going, yes.
Thank you. We have what is severely lacking from this is they did not include any of the millions of the tourists or the visitors that come to Hollywood. And even though our population has dropped as far as our resident population, our tourist population and the visitors and the street closures and the special events have not. Our police officers and our firefighters and our ambulances are running ragged 24/7. So please, help us take a look at this.
I appreciate that. And I recall that you came to the Plum Committee and I believe shared the same sentiment, if that was you.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
we need your help. This is hopefully your purview and your specialty, and while I know that our other public agencies can't comment on these specific things, they are extremely concerned.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming this morning as well, sharing that. Seeing no other general public comment speaker cards, that will close public comment, and we'll adjourn that. And we'll go ahead and take items number 1.
Item 1, Board of Police Commissioners and CO reports relative to an agreement with the Saving Lives San Fernando Valley Coalition. to conduct compliance checks of retail establishments and medical marijuana dispensaries to reduce commercial availability of alcohol and marijuana to minors.
Good morning.
Morning.
Captain John Egan, Commanding Officer, West Valley area. I'm happy to be here in front of this committee to talk to you about the Saving Lives San Fernando Valley Drug and Alcohol Coalition. We at West Valley were approached by this organization when they were soliciting some grant funding from the federal government with a primary focus on alcohol and a secondary focus on marijuana and prescription drug abuse by young people in the community, specifically in the San Fernando Valley area. The funds that we are requesting to be approved are funds that will be used first and foremost to assist our vice officers in doing vice enforcement, with a focus there regarding off-premise ABC locations, dealing with our ability to put out the specialized details that we do to ensure that these ABC locations are not, in fact, selling alcohol to minors. These funds will allow us to do or expand our enforcement efforts, because there are enforcement efforts that we do on a regular basis, but this funding source will allow us to do some additional resources. We've been partnering with them in that we've afforded them the use of the Ann Kinzel Community Room in West Valley Community Police Station, and they meet there on a regular basis. There's a large number of folks that actually attend those meetings on a regular basis, and we participate as well. It's allowed us to get in contact with others in the community that are fully supportive of their efforts and our efforts in addressing what we believe is a significant problem, and that is the abuse of alcohol by underage drinkers. There's a secondary component to it, which is still an evolutionary component, and that involves enforcement efforts directly related to medical marijuana clinics that exist in the greater West Valley area. That is still a work in progress. So the initial expenditures of funds will be focused on alcohol enforcement.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much. And did you go to the station before coming in here this morning?
Did I go to the station first? No.
Came directly from home?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious because these similar paths, you could have carpooled. I was going to set up some, trying to think about saving taxpayer dollars. And anyway, Mr. Zine had some questions on
I
this.
think your commute's a little shorter than mine.
I know.
You don't live in the far West Valley.
No, I live in the northeast San Fernando Valley, so.
Anyway, the questions I had, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Number one, I've never heard of this organization, the Saving Lives San Fernando Valley Coalition. Who are the participants? Who are the folks in that organization?
Well, they're actually affiliated with Chabad of the San Fernando Valley. They are, in fact, the parent organization. It consists of members of the law enforcement community, that would be us, other healthcare professionals, a variety of different individuals in the community, including several substance abuse centers, such as the Tarzana Treatment Center, and others.
And the grant award from the Executive Office, the President Office of National Drug Control Policy, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, why didn't the police department apply for this grant directly instead of having this other organization apply for the grant? Because I'm sure there's administrative costs that are going towards the coalition that could be used if the police department applied directly. So if we have the opportunity to get a grant from the federal government and avoid administrative costs from an outside entity, why would we do this process versus the other?
That's a good question, Council Member. We were approached by the members of the San Fernando Valley Drug and Alcohol Coalition to work in partnership with them on this grant. My recollection is that there was a fairly short turnaround time to complete the request for funds, and it was not something that was on my personal radar as it related to grant funds.
Because when I'm looking at the funding award at $24,000, and this, I understand, is for 3 years or 5 years?
5 years.
5-year program. with a matching $1,500 from the city, which I support the program. I'm just questioning why we didn't go directly to them, because I'm sure there's money that's going to be appropriated for administrative costs from the entity instead of getting the direct from the feds to us, and which would give us more money to use for the enforcement. Because I never heard of this place in the organization in the first place.
Just for the record, if I could, you had stated there's a $1,500 match from the city. It actually says in the contract, LAPD's compliance checks will be conducted at 3 different times per year at $1,600 per occurrence, equaling $4,800 per year, with a total, it's a $24,000 city contribution to this, not $1,500. Just wanted to point that out.
So I'm looking at the item 1 page, and it shows funding award $24,000 and matching funds $1,500.
Right, and so I'm looking at the contract between the City of LA and Chabad. And so,
I don't think I have that.
Yeah, the in-kind contributions are basically the normal type of ABC enforcement that our vice units would actually be participating in.
See, I don't have that part. LAPD's compliance checks will be conducted 3 different times per year, $1,600 per occurrence, $4,800 per year. We're going to receive a total of $24,000 over the 5-year performance period. Where's the other dollars coming from? The matching part.
The LAPD matching part consists of efforts that we do as part and parcel of our normal vice operations to support the overall effort as it relates to addressing alcohol abuse by minors.
I have some concerns about why we're not going directly, and no disrespect to these other entities that are involved, but we get grants all the time from the federal government, the state government, the county government. I don't know why we just can't go direct to the federal government, which is the Office of National Drug Control Policy. Do we know how much the administrative costs are that they're utilizing out of this grant?
No, I don't have that.
Let me make a suggestion. It seems like there are some questions on the table. I support this, but there's some questions on the table. What I'd like to do is go ahead and move this out of committee. We held it once. Move it on to council, but in the meantime, if we need to move it back to committee at council, I'm willing to do that. But in the meantime, it'll have the opportunity to have the council member of the district, who is extremely knowledgeable in law enforcement as well, former sergeant at LAPD, meet with you, Captain, and answer any questions you guys might have. And when the comfort level is there, we'll go ahead and move this on to council. And if for whatever reason you can't get together, you can't get the answers, Mr. Zine, be happy to move it back to committee at that time. But in an effort to move forward, what I would suggest is let's go ahead and move it on to council.
We do that. But so I want to know the administrative cost, how much it's costing out of this grant, or additional dollars that we could appropriate for the program. I totally support the enforcement of the ABC rules, regulations, working vice in the past in my career. I know what a cumbersome task and a time-consuming task. I have no questions regarding the enforcement. I just want to make sure if we can capture dollars for that to give overtime to get things done. And additional, we know the problems you and I discussed, the marijuana situation in the West Valley. So if we can break down the dollars, that's what I'm looking at. How much administrative is going to the organizations that are part of this coalition, and the fact is where we're going to find the match that's required, and why we didn't, and I don't know if it comes out of your shop or the Bureau or downtown, why we didn't apply for this grant or similar grants and receive all the money instead of having it divided the way it's been divided. Is this only for West Valley, or is this being utilized by other divisions in the city?
Just West Valley.
Okay.
Okay, so if you could do that, we'll go ahead and move it on with no position from the committee.
Nope. Okay.
Okay, at this point, and perhaps even if the captain want to suggest renaming this to the Saving Denison San Fernando Valley Coalition before this comes to council.
You know, we watch every penny and every dollar and want to know where it's coming from.
Might help. the grant. Okay.
Thank you.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, Mr. Captain Egan, thanks again. So it's my understanding that the Habab of California, they initiated this grant.
Yes,
Came from them. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, thank you, Captain, again, for coming down. We're going to go ahead and hear, I believe that takes us to item 12.
You also have 11 still on the desk?
11, oh yes, we still do have 11 on the desk. Let's go ahead and, we do have a general manager here for 11. So if we can bring 11 back. You weren't with Mr. Zine and sitting in traffic, were you this morning, Mr. Featherstone?
Sorry, he called me to know where
I knew exactly where he was. We have the GPS tracker on Mr. Zine.
Got it.
Good morning.
Morning, sir. Jim Featherstone, General Manager of the Emergency Management Department. Good morning. Always a pleasure to be before this committee.
Appreciate you coming. And I wanted to just, we had a little bit of an update this morning, and it was actually very good dialogue. We got into some different topics that were a little off topic, but wanted to really talk about the emergency operations plan in regards to the functional support of the Annex, the citywide recovery and responsibilities, and how we're doing and what the report consists of. And if you can walk us through just some of the highlights. I know you're really busy as well, but this is critically important information to share and get out there on the functional support and recovery of major disasters and how we're doing.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. The report coming before this committee is the final step in the vetting process when we do any additions or significant revisions to the city's emergency operations master plan and functional annexes. The recovery functional support annex is one of our latest updates. As I'm sure you're aware, recovery is the longest and most expensive phase of emergency management. What we've done with this annex is come up with a more contemporary document for the use in the inevitable recovery from a catastrophic disaster or emergency here in the city. One of the key points in the annex, we've embraced the concept that's relatively new called advanced recovery. There's significant things that we can do ahead of time that make our recovery efforts much more efficient and actually will increase the rapidity in which we execute recovery. We put a lot of advanced work now into our response effort. We can do a lot of things in terms of our recovery efforts right now. For instance, for example, the city of San Francisco, the county of San Diego, and the city of Los Angeles have all been involved in this advanced recovery effort for about 2 years, working in conjunction with the Kennedy School at Harvard University. San Francisco, when they have a major catastrophe, because, for example, the first person they fly out of the city is their controller. You know, the controller goes back to the deal with the agencies that actually set the city's bond ratings, and they say, here's our recovery plan, here's where we are today, tomorrow, next week, et cetera. So we do have a plan, a dedicated plan for recovery, because during recovery, of course, as you know, is when the city's ability to borrow money is extremely critical. The other thing is to have to be able to shorten the contracting or the permitting process during recovery. Those are some of the things that I just want to throw out as examples that we're looking at and are actually suggested in the advanced recovery portion of the recovery functional annex.
And in looking at this 156 pages, and there's a lot of information in here in detail, which is great. Is there any kind of PowerPoint to accompany this? And the reason I'm asking, and if there isn't, perhaps something can be put together. Instead of just moving on this on to council, I would like and prefer you to give a full presentation to the entire city council. I think it's critically important that we don't just send this to council and simply receive or note and file the report. I think this is so important that you need to share this work product and what you've done as a department, what we've done as a city with the entire council, because first and foremost, public safety is the most important function that we have here in Los Angeles. And we know we're the epicenter of disaster. We know that we have our annual fires and major train accidents. If it happens here in LA. We have good weather, but we have major disasters to go along with it, including earthquakes. And so I think the entire city council needs to hear this, and rather than spend a couple hours just with the three of us here and now, and you've got 3 police officers sitting here, that we are, I think, the 3 on the city council, if not a couple more, to join us along with that, to say that we understand disaster preparedness and recovery, emergency preparedness and planning responsibilities are the most important and essential function of the city.
Yes, sir.
We get that. We need to hear the rest of the council. They need to hear this as well. And how much time do you think it would take to put together sort of a PowerPoint on these 156 points or pages and have a presentation ready for council? And is that something you'd want to do?
Oh, absolutely, Councilman. Excuse me, appreciate you bringing.
As my voice cracks all the time.
Appreciate you giving us an opportunity to bring focus to recovery, because that, as you know, Northridge was in '94. FEMA only closed their recovery office, I believe it was in 2007, 2008.
That's right.
So recovery lasts a long time, and I think for us as a city and also with the nation watching what happens in Los Angeles, to be able to put some focus on the recovery phase is huge. I would say a week or two to put together a presentation for the council would be more than sufficient.
Okay. Mr. Buscaino, do you have anything? Mr. Zine?
Good, I'd like the presentation again.
Okay, terrific. Okay, let's go ahead and do that, and we'll move it on to council. You'll let us know when you're ready.
Yes, sir.
And we'll figure the next maybe 60 days.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Is that enough time?
Oh,
I mean, you're
more
busy.
than
You've got a lot going on. I don't want to make this a priority above everything else you're doing. And so if 60 days, if you think is reasonable, we'll have it ready then for
Yes,
some
sir.
kind of PowerPoint, and
Absolutely.
60 days and a presentation to council, I think would be fantastic. And I really appreciate all your work, and your staff has been terrific. So
Mr. Featherstone has a huge staff to take care of this project.
absolutely.
Don't laugh, huge staff.
I just canceled my weekend plan.
60 days. They want 90 days. I was, okay.
So note and file the report and hold it until their PowerPoint presentation is ready for council scheduling?
I think we won't hold it in the committee. We'll go ahead and send it in the council, and then
With the
have
note and
with
file
a
that.
note and file that, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for coming this morning. All right. Where does that take us? Next item. No, I believe that ends the agenda.
Number 12 is still on the table. You could,
Oh, we do have number 12. You're right. Occupy costs. Do we have anybody from the CAO's office here to speak on the report
June is there, watching.
from the CAO's report? CAO's office?
You kind of blend in everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zine, for pointing that out.
Okay.
Tyler Munhall, CAO. This is an update to our December 23rd report in response to your motion relative to costs for Occupy LA. So this has updated costs, which are in attachment A, as well. The updated costs are for police, rec and parks, and we also got the repair costs for the monuments.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, Tyler, let me just say you've done a phenomenal job at this. I know how difficult this has been for you to put all this information together, to go out to all the departments and gather this. Most people don't realize that we are not set up in the city. Not every department is set up on timesheets. They don't enter in all their time, and even LAPD for that matter. It's all done on paper and pencil, and to enter timesheets. But with that, and it has to be rekeyed in, and it's not all coded by incident, particularly always documented as such, and unless it's overtime or something like that. But with that, we have a lot of departments that touched Occupy. And the reason for doing this, and the reason for the motion and the spirit behind it, and I wanted to recognize your work on this, because it is quite a Herculean task in going to these departments and saying, how much time did you spend? And this doesn't capture everything, because, we don't have mayoral staff in here. We don't have all the city attorney time in here. We have some. We don't have any of the city council members or their staff time in here. I mean, there's a lot of departments as well that are not acknowledged. The Department of Water and Power, who was out there as well. I don't believe they were able to capture all of their time because the systems just simply aren't in place to capture time. We're not on time systems in the city of every department where we bill time, like law firms and private practice. And the reason and the spirit behind this was that for every action is a reaction, and for every resolution or position the city might take, there's a cost. And it's not to take a position so much, and my idea behind this was not to take a position on Occupy, and no matter who felt what about Occupy. It was an issue of what did it cost us to say they can stay overnight, that they can camp out, and we have laws and regulations and codes and ordinances that prohibit that. And the reason we do prohibit that is because it costs money to enforce it. It costs money to monitor it. It costs money to clean it up. It's a matter of public safety. It's a matter of public nuisance. And some of the stories that came out of it, which I don't want to go through right now, about how some of the living conditions and children were there, you know, those are all separate stories. But the actual dollar amounts, this is nearing $5 million. The original projections was about $2.5 million. And looking at this, and again, with the footnote that we weren't able to capture all the time from all the departments, we can easily round this off to $5 million. We're at $4.7 million now. While we did get some of that in kind and donated goods, the totality of all the costs for the Board of Public Works and Sanitation and cleanup, street lighting, street services, emergency management, the fire department, general services, information technology, the police department with both on the job and overtime costs, recreation and parks, transportation, and the repair of the monuments, all of that all in, we're at $4.7 million. And I think it behooves us as a fiduciary and our responsibility as elected officials when we take positions. We don't just take them because it sounds good. When we make a formal resolution, we take a vote on a position. Oftentimes there's a cost to that, and we need to weigh that, particularly now when we're going through a budget crisis. We're looking at about a $220 million budget deficit. We're looking at 159 civilian layoffs in the police department, 15 civilian layoffs in the fire department, major cutbacks in rec and parks and maintenance. They're talking about cutting out weed abatement and graffiti abatement and scaling that back. We're looking at, in the rec and parks budget, in fact, they're talking about not emptying trash on a regular basis and not cleaning the restrooms. All those things cost money, and so, you know, it's one thing to go out there and support folks and have a press conference. It's another to say, we're going to do it on the backs of taxpayers, and this is $5 million. So I really, truly appreciate you putting this report together. I think it's critically important to share this information with the general public and be completely transparent. And with that, I'll move to go ahead and note and file this and send it on to council. And with if you could be prepared to present this to council when it comes as well. And I'll turn this over to Joe Buscaino if you've got any questions on this. Sir Dennis Zine?
Have we looked at the restitution fees that would be imposed by those arrested?
I know the city attorney was looking at that. I don't have the status on it at this point in time. We could certainly ask the city attorney to report on that.
Thank you.
If we can add that to the report coming back to council as well from the committee, that'd be great. Thank you. And that was one of the other things we didn't have. We didn't have county time in this at all. We didn't have court time. There wasn't any of the time with the district attorney's office on any felony charges. So there's a lot of time that's just not captured in this as well. Although what you've done is an incredible job of actually nailing down the departments and retracting and extracting all that information and putting it into a comprehensive report. And so appreciate that. Mr. Zine.
The city attorney did
have some time
expend $187,916 consultation, so maybe we can get some answers on that question. Does this reflect the total cost, including the restorations taking place now?
Yes. It also includes related costs, so...
This is the final bill. We're not going to receive another bill after this.
As the council member said, there may be costs that are not reflected here. For instance, the direct costs for the elected offices, they're captured in the related cost data. That's based on the cap, which is an imperfect, but what we have.
But as far as the restoration, the planting of the grass and the trees, et cetera, that's all covered in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be approved, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, and I believe that concludes now the regular agenda,
Yes, it does.
and that takes us to the special. Mr. Clerk.
Item 1, motion Alarcon, Rizal, Rosendahl, Cardenas, Koretz, instructing the city CAO and CLA to report relative to the financial costs of underage drinking for the city of LA, and requesting the city attorney prepare an ordinance to prohibit alcohol advertising on city-owned controlled property.
Okay, with that, we don't have a report from any departments before us, members. We do have a number of speaker cards. I believe this committee will be asking questions of, well, we'll go ahead and go with the speaker cards first. We've opened it up. Since there's no report to comment on specifically yet, and we'll end up bringing this back with a report and recommendations, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment for 1 minute, because I know we've heard from many folks already as well, and urging this issue, and I appreciate you coming to public safety and the council and urging the issue as well. And so, while I've been waiting to get some information back, nothing's been forthcoming yet, so we're going to go ahead and probably at the end of this meeting formally request that as a committee, and just wanted to give you that notice in advance. You can feel free, I know a minute's not a long time, you don't still have to use the whole minute. I know exactly what most of the positions are, and I've heard from many of you already, but you're here and you've made the effort, and I do appreciate that as well. It's very important. Your names will be read into the record, and Mr. Zine.
There'll be no action, no vote.
There's nothing to take action on. That's correct. There's no vote to take action on. There's nothing to actually take action on at this time. The only actionable items will be to ask for specific reports back, which is what we're going to do. And I've got a list of items that I'd like to hear back on exactly what's out there, and you'll hear that at the end of public comment. We'll go through all of that as well. But it's the reports and the action items. That's the critical thing for you to weigh in on when we do have that information back. For you to vet that and say, well, this is missing, and this wasn't asked, and what about that? And that's where we start having the dialogue. And so, but I do appreciate you coming. And I'm going to go ahead and read 3 cards at a time. I'm going to start off with Jose Rodriguez, Councilmember Alarcon's office. Dennis Hathaway, if you can please step forward as well. And if I get any of these names wrong, let me apologize in advance and say that it was Mr. Zine's fault. He wrote out the pronunciation. Buscaino. And Renee Rodriguez, please step forward as well. Oh, you're going to have a seat at the mic, and then in the order that I called the cards, we'll go ahead and speak.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman Englander and honorable members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Jose Rodriguez with the Office of Councilmember Alarcon. Councilmember Alarcon has prepared a letter that he'd like me to read to you and enter into the record. Dear members of the Public Safety Committee, as members of the Public Safety Committee, you are all aware that one of the most important parts of our jobs as council members is protecting children in our communities. This does not just mean protecting children from gangs and violence. It also means protecting them from influences that promote products, behavior, and images that we know to be harmful. One of the most destructive influences currently in our communities is advertising by alcohol companies, which we know and studies prove targets and influences our children in an attempt to create new generations of customers for their harmful product. On August 16, 2011, I introduced a motion seconded by Council Members Cardenas, Rosendahl, Huizar, and Koretz, which will prohibit alcohol advertising on city-owned and controlled property. The ordinance would exempt concert and sports venues similar to laws enacted by the cities of San Francisco, California, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it would not affect existing contracts. Today, I am asking for your support of the motion as it is considered by the Council's Public Safety Committee, and that we move quickly to receive from the CAO and CLA in the next 30 days a report outlining the financial cost of underage drinking to the City of Los Angeles, with an emphasis on data from the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles Fire Department and community groups. The toll that alcohol abuse takes on Los Angeles is far too costly, in both lives damaged and the cost to our city. When people abuse alcohol, we all end up paying the cost. A recent study by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health found that the total economic cost of alcohol use in the Los Angeles County is $10.8 billion annually. And when companies market alcohol to children, more people are likely to abuse it in the future. We can limit the negative effects of alcohol abuse by limiting companies' ability to directly target our children. Given the size and proportion of young people in the city of Los Angeles who are especially susceptible to alcohol advertising, as well as the general impact of alcohol advertising on alcohol use, I believe that our city can help prevent underage drinking by legally using our authority to restrict alcohol advertising on city-owned and controlled property. This will not only be a responsible step for our city to take, but it will help address the financial burden and the loss of productivity and life caused by underage drinking. I again ask for your support of my motion so we can move a significant step closer to protecting children in the city of Los Angeles.
Great, thank you. And just for the record, if you could submit that for the record as well. We typically and historically allow more time if we're reading a letter into the record from an elected official if they're the maker of the motion, which he was. And so I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So, and thank you. Good morning again. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. And thank you for hearing us out one more time. We were here recently. We appreciate the movement, the actions that's been taken so far. Again, we're just here to reemphasize the need to...
You can state your name again for the record.
I'm sorry. Ruben Rodriguez. I'm Executive Director of Pueblo y Salud, community service agency in the Northeast San Fernando Valley with the focus of our work on prevention. And I'm also the chairman of the coalition to ban alcohol ads on public property in the city of LA. And we're just here once again asking for you, the city fathers, to help us and pass this ordinance, because there's no way we can counter the money, the dollars that the alcohol industry is spending on convincing the new generation of drinkers to consume the product. And I think the only way we can counter that is if you protect the citizens of this city. So we hope you move it forward, and we hope the ordinance passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Hathaway. I'm president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. We're a nonprofit organization representing individuals and community groups throughout the city of Los Angeles. We're also a member of the Coalition to Ban Alcohol Ads on Public Property. I'm sure you know that the MTA does not allow alcohol advertising on any of its buses, trains, and transit facilities. And a couple years ago, CBS Outdoor, which has the MTA advertising contract, went to the MTA board and asked that that prohibition be lifted, and said that they could, the MTA could get up to $50 million more in revenue if they did that. And the board rejected that. And I believe, if I remember correctly, was Supervisor Yaroslavsky said, this is not the message we want to send, that we are part of marketing alcohol, particularly to the young people who use our transit system. I hope you will support this as this moves forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rene Rodriguez, and I'm here from Charles Sandett Treatment Center, and I'm here to support the coalition. They asked me to read a sentence from this paper, and it's most major U.S. cities currently ban alcohol advertising on public transport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Barbara Martinez, John Whitaker, Shannon Dugan? Yes. Morning. Thank you. Followed by Milo Anderson. Milo. Yes. Thank you. Please.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Martinez, and I'm a parent at Roosevelt High School. And I come in front of you to thank you for giving me the time to speak to you. But I really wish that you guys look into this really carefully, because I noticed the effect that it does with our students at Roosevelt. How a lot of these young people are drinking, and they go to school and they're not paying attention. They're not getting ahead in their education. And forehand, my son, I didn't know he was drinking, and I noticed the change in my son. And I think it's very, crucial that we look into this, because it's affecting our youth, and we cannot afford for our children, our future, to fall into this. And I also wish you look into voting against this, to stop the signs on advertising in where our children could see, because we could see that. Thank you.
Go ahead. Oh, no, thank you for coming. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good morning. My name is John Whitaker. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I am the AWARE liaison for Southern California, and I also work at Tarzana Treatment Centers. And thank you very much for taking the time to hear us. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
You gentlemen and Ms. Perry are the parents in this situation for the city of Los Angeles. There is good parenting and bad parenting. And we would urge you to be good parents and not put signs in front of your lawns that say, vote for alcohol. Don't put signs on our property that says, give us alcohol. Give us alcohol. Be good parents. And the question that I have to ask is, why do we have to have alcohol ads? There is no reason that we have to have alcohol ads. You've just mentioned that there's a $200 million deficit. $10 billion in the county of Los Angeles is what goes to costs because of alcohol. So we urge you to be good parents.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon, and I'm also in long-term recovery. And I began drinking at a young, impressionable age, and I believe that those advertisements glamorized it. And I am a young mother and have a daughter about 8 years old, and I will do anything in my power to help keep her from seeing those types of things, if at all possible. And also in young youth in markets with greater alcohol advertising expenditures, drink more. So thank you.
Thank you for coming. Milo.
Thank you, council members, for letting me speak before you. My name is Milo Anderson. I'm also in recovery for alcoholism, specifically at Tarzana Treatment Center. I grew up in Canoga Park, California, and my brother is now expecting a daughter in Canoga Park, California, and I'm excited about that, and I'm excited for her future. I would like to see less alcohol ads out in our city. For her to not end up becoming a underage drinker like I was. And I'll just speak to you as a citizen of Los Angeles now. It makes dollars and cents sense to not have advertising of alcoholism that's going to cost our city more money in public services such as safety and EMT costs. I remember I went to a safety meeting a couple of weeks ago here where you guys were discussing the budget cuts to the fire department and EMT response times. Well, alcohol-related injuries, accidents, problems, especially in youth, our children, are a major contributor to those response times, those lack of good response times, and huge budgetary drains. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. Appreciate all you coming this morning. We've got Vivian Morales, followed by Brianna Verbeek. Did I get that right?
Verbeek.
No, I didn't get that right. Verbeek. There's two E's.
Yes.
But it's Verbeek. Okay. And Ruben Rodriguez. That's 4. If we could, so we're missing 2. Oh, Ruben already spoke. Correct? And Jorge Castillo. Okay. Don't be shy. Speak up.
Hi, good morning. My name is Vivian Morales. I am in long-term recovery, and I am a mother. And I believe the youth are 96 more times likely to see an ad promoting alcohol than an industry ad discouraging underage drinking. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Brianna Verbeck, and I am a long-term recovery right now with Tarzana treatment, and I have 11-year-old. And I believe that 6th and 7th graders, this is a fact, exposed to high levels of alcohol advertising are 50% more likely to drink than children with low exposure to such marketing. So I wouldn't like my daughter exposed to any of this. So thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
My name is Jorge Castillo. I'm from Alcohol Justice. I'm under the alcohol companies. And I want to thank the committee for giving us time to discuss this issue. I want to mention some statistics that we found a couple of years ago in LA County and LA City. The cost to public safety associated with crime is $1.7 billion to local government. And alcohol-related crime, if you break it down percentage-wise, we find that assaults compromise 21%, rape 20%, robbery 17%, and homicide 21%. And the leading cause of alcohol-related death for young men in LA County of all ethnicities is alcohol-related homicide. So the city should not engage in promoting a product that's harmful to young people and to the city at large, and it's costing so much financially also. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. All right. We have Teresa Marquez, and I know I didn't get that right. I'm trying to read writing. Did I get that right? She's coming on up.
Teresa Marquez.
Marquez, okay. Maja.
She's coming up.
All right. You're going to help me out on that one, right? That's I know if I could try it.
I feel your pain.
This,
You can't get mine.
it's Buscaino for you in the crowd. Let's see. Buscaino. All right. Yes.
Let's call him Happy Joe.
Happy Joe. Or Steve. We call him Steve sometimes. Just never mind. It's long. Sorry. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay.
My name is Teresa Marquez. I'm from Boyle Heights, and I'm president of the Boyle Heights Stakeholders Association and board member of Mothers of East LA. The reason I'm here is in support to ban alcohol advertisements. Just a quick, this is Boyle Heights, the perimeter. The red spots are all the liquor licenses that we have, 249 liquor licenses in Boyle Heights. We don't need advertisement. This is advertisement enough. But I'll tell you, in a study that we had a meeting this March for this, I hold on to that. I did that manually. No computer.
Oh, and that took some work.
In a 6-month study in 2011, there were 2 DUIs, felonies, 349 alcohol-related traffic violations, and of others, crimes in Boyle Heights were alcohol-related in a 6-month period.
Did you, let me ask you this. Did you want to submit that for the record? Do you have something in writing?
This?
Sure. Thank you. I know you don't want to submit that. You want to hold on to that. And we all know that.
Yes, I do.
Put a lot of work into that.
This is a copy of the press release.
Terrific. Okay, we'll go ahead and the clerk will
What
take that from
information
you.
do you want me to put on there?
They can just take a copy if you'd like.
Okay.
Since you didn't have the opportunity to finish reading it, we wanted to have a copy. And you put so much time into coming this morning, so we wanted to have a copy.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much.
One question, is it on and off sale? You mentioned on and off.
Total.
Okay.
On and off.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Maja Trochimczyk. It's Trochimczyk, for the record.
I was going to try it. I started making an attempt, and
I'm a senior director of planning at Phoenix Houses of California. We are an agency that treats substance abuse in youth and adults nationwide, and we have found that alcohol is number one drug among youth. It's also one of the most prevalent drugs among adults who come in for treatment. Alcoholism is a serious, debilitating, chronic disease, and it develops in just some people who use alcohol. But we think that glamorizing alcohol by alcohol ads and spreading the message that alcohol is cool among our youth, who are very impressionable at this young age, is really harmful to the public health, to their personal health, and to the whole city, as it relates into increased costs for public health and other issues.
Great. Thank you very much for
We
coming
have
this
other
morning.
people from my
Yes,
agency.
we've got some others as well. There's more cards. The last four cards that I have are Patricia. It's either Esqual or Esquivel. No, not even close. Really? Really? All right. Patricia, I got that right. All right, give me that. Give me that much. All right. Angelica Orozco. I got that? All right. All right. Albert Nilana. Danielle Romero. All right, Danielle, I got. All right, I got that one right. All right, fantastic. These are the last four I have. If I can ask Mr. Repovich to either step outside or keep his voice down, that would be great, so we can hear our guest speakers who drove all the way out here this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Angelica. I come from Phoenix House, the Prevention Department. We are part of the county-wide assessment process addressing other drugs, especially underage drinking. So I'm just going to give you two facts that we found so far. 28% of 12 to 17 years old, addressing them in a survey, self-reported having easy access of alcohol in schools and parties.
Alcohol in schools.
In schools, parties and homes. And out of those surveys, when talking to 25 years older parents, 25 years older.
25 years? Okay.
There you go. 40% of the respondents pointed out or identified alcohol advertisement to be one of the main contributing factors for underage drinking.
Well, thank you very much. And if you have this full survey, if you would like to submit the full survey to the committee for consideration, that would be helpful as well. Terrific. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for letting us speak before you. I too am here representing.
If you can just state your name.
Phoenix House. My name is Patricia. Sorry, I got a little excited. I'm here representing Phoenix House, and as my coworker said, we are part of this countywide assessment. And we noticed that 80% of youth ages 12 to 17 state they have easy access to alcohol and marijuana, and 75% said they have drank a full drink of alcohol before the age of 15. As a matter of fact, alcohol is 14-year-olds is the average age for alcoholism. And so knowing that there's a direct correlation between advertisement and to drinking, and they're more likely to see alcohol advertisement versus non-alcoholic advertisement or, being an against, we urge you to pass this ordinance and give our children a safer environment to grow up in.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You made a statement that the 14 years old is the average age of alcoholism.
Yes.
Let me just get a clarifying statement on that and ask, does that mean that the average 14-year-old is an alcoholic, or does that mean that average alcoholic is 14?
The second one.
Got it. Okay. Second one.
Even that confused me a little bit.
Thanks for the clarification. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Sir.
Good morning. My name is Albert Milena. I'm a member of the coalition to ban billboards on public property. I think if we've heard some of the statistics as far as alcohol being a factor in the 4 leading causes of death for young people, and that's something that we really need to take to heart, and that alcohol kills more young people than all illegal substances combined.
Wait. Say that one more time, slowly, because I want everybody to hear.
Alcohol kills more young people than all illegal substances combined. So when we talk about advertising, a USA, and this is a fact sheet by the Center on Alcohol Marketing and Youth, a USA Today survey found that teens say that ads have greater influence on their desire to drink in general than their desire to buy a particular alcohol brand. So what they're saying is that these advertisements encourage them to drink. Another fact that and there's plenty here, according to the Federal Trade Commission on Self-Regulations, While many factors influence young people, including family, friends, advertisement is one of the major influences for young people to drink. And I can submit this fact sheet by the Center on Alcohol Marketing and Youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Romero. I'm from Amity Foundation. So I'm going to start with the statistics that you're looking at right now. You're looking at a statistic of alcoholism started at the age of maybe 6, 7 years old. Wow. So the impact of the temptation of seeing something as a child in the mind of a child is, I think that's like a crucial part of how people, I'm speaking on my own self, that's how I got influenced into it by seeing other things, by seeing these billboards, by seeing people do drinking and seeing the commercials and seeing that kind of thing. Something about that water, the sweat on the cup, just the thought of being where that person was with the smiling face, growing up in a poor neighborhood, growing up with a single parent. I thought that was what it was about. And here I am 40 years later, fighting this addiction. You know, and I think that my statistics to you would be, you're looking at it, here I am 40 years later, barely getting off of parole, changing my life, trying to do something positive, but it took me from then to now to get that. So my statistics to you is this: look at me, I'm sitting here telling you that my first drink of alcohol was at the age of 5 years old, and it all started with something that I seen.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you all for coming and taking the time and courage to come out and speak. And let me just ask all of you, I know some of the faces I recognize as regulars, and there's some new faces as well. For those new faces that have come, is this the first time you've actually come to a meeting like this, where you're actually on a microphone, where possibly thousands of people are listening, and you're before the city council? That's a very formal setting. It's a little scary, and for some, not for others. But I want to thank you for putting yourselves out there and coming down here and having the courage to weigh in on something you care about and that you're passionate about. You're not here for any other reason but to try to do the right thing for our society. So I want to thank you all for coming out here and taking the time. I appreciate that. I think I speak on behalf of Mr. Zine and Mr. Buscaino as well. Thank you. I just have a couple questions. I've got questions I'm going to go through that I'm going to ask for a report back first,
Thank you.
if we could, and then we can add to that, and we've got to get to council in a couple minutes. Thank you very much. So we're going to ask the CLA, we need a very comprehensive report back. This is an extremely passionate issue, but we've got to make decisions also based on contractual law. Some of the items that were stated earlier were that other cities possibly already have a ban. We need to research that. We've been told, not officially on the record, but I've been told through research that those bans don't take effect for 20 or 30 years, that contracts can't be changed. We need to look into all that. Are we putting ourselves in greater liability if we just try to ban it and we have existing contracts? All those kinds of things have to play into this as well. We've got to put a number on it as well. Not just the cost of society, as many of you brought up, the cost for enforcement, law enforcement, the cost on a community that alcohol brings. But specifically, one thing we're talking about, just so you're aware, is only alcohol advertising on city property. So you'll drive down the street and you'll continue to see alcohol advertising. Why? Because it's not on city property. We can't control, under First Amendment rights, private property. And so how much is out there? We've really got to get our arms around this, and that's what the report will help us do, and we'll help you weigh in on as well, for full transparency, once we have that. I do have a list of questions. Mr. Clerk, I can submit them for the report rather than read them all into the record, or what would you prefer? It's going to be request to the CLA to report back.
I can take the letter from you and add them to the committee report.
Okay, we'll go ahead and submit them. They do have, I have things, for example, on what impact we'd like to know specifically what it'll have in communities. So those are good, beneficial things to have and weigh in on. What percentage of all outdoor advertising is owned or controlled by the city? We're going to get into writing an ordinance. We need to know that kind of information. What percent of city-controlled advertising carries advertising for alcoholic beverages? What current contracts are out there right now that we have where, if we're in the middle of a contract, can we actually ban that or not? Or do we have to? If we do ban it, there are questions that say we ban it, but we have a company that gave us a bid for advertising, for example, on bus shelters or billboards on city property, and they built that into their bid on revenue. There's two things they might have done. They might have given us PSAs, public service announcements. I've got those questions in here as well. Do those go away? We all have seen the Sober Grad advertising. Do those come with the benefit of having alcohol advertising? So those are all the questions we've got to get to the bottom of. So we'll submit all these questions. If Mr. Zine has additional questions, from Mr. Buscaino has questions, we can send those questions in as well, and we'll have the CLA report back.
If I could just add one question, I know our airport has alcohol advertising, so we can check with the city
Those are all
attorney.
here as
It's
well.
on there as
I'll
well?
share these questions.
Very good.
We've got the proprietaries in here, and do we have any control over the proprietary departments as well, or their property? And so those questions will be asked and answered. We'll ask for the report to be drafted and try to come back here within 60 days.
We'll submit to the chair, the reason that we have a council meeting at 10 o'clock, and they can't begin until we get there, so that's why we have to go.
That's why yes, just so you're aware. The sergeant has just walked in to handcuff us and bring us downstairs. So again, I want to thank you all again for coming this morning. I truly appreciate it. This meeting is officially adjourned.
Thank you.